Hello everyone, it's Michelle here. I'm very mindful that I'm very behind, so I just wanted to run you through my signature talk um, in the next 10 minutes or so because, yeah, I need to kind of practice and for you all to see it. So, my talk title is No Guilt, No Shame Strategies for Talking About the Gender Pay Gap in Your Workplace. So, are you putting closing your pay gap in the too difficult pile? I'd like a show of hands, and I know it's a brave thing to do, but are you an organization that's struggling? You're struggling with knowing what to say and knowing what to do. And if you are, then I want you to look around everyone else who has their hands up and know that you're not alone. And we also know this because half of the reports that are put out are done on the day of the deadline, which tells us so much that there is a whole swathe of organisations who are really struggling with this. And there's a great phrase from a Tibetan or Buddhist nun called pt1, and she says, never underestimate the human capacity to run from discomfort. Because that's what we do. When we are faced with something that seems really uncomfortable, we are brilliant at finding a way to avoid it. We do it in our personal lives, we do it with our friends and our families, and we definitely, as organisations, do it at work. And when it comes to pay gap reporting, it's no different because it's designed to be disruptive. The fact that it's public knowledge and that everybody can see it and that you can look over the past 3 years' data and start comparing is so disruptive. And I knew that it was going to be disruptive by the lack of support that business gave it when it was in its voluntary phase. But it's here now and it's compulsory. And I can give you a great example of an organisation who, when faced with the opportunity to address a pay gap issue, because it was clearly something really uncomfortable for them, decided to run a mile. And this is the bit where I'm going to give the story of the construction firm that didn't want to talk about ethnicity pay gaps and the politics of hair, but I won't name them. So, when was the last time as a business you asked for help? When it came to pay gap reporting, have you turned to external consultants to help you with this? Now, the reason I ask this is because I know that there are so many organisations out there who are struggling with that weight of guilt and shame and are happy to put out their reports because they have to, but are not happy having real conversations with anyone who can help them do something about it. It's almost like they don't want a light shone too much on their pay gap data or the information that's coming out because it just seems too painful to deal with. And I know this because it's not uncommon for an organisation to contact me, say in January, and then we don't actually start working together until September or even the following January. Now you might say, oh, well, business is busy, people have things to do, other priorities come up. But it's very much that thing of if it's important enough, you'll make time for it. And the fact that whenever I'm contacted by any firm, I fully expect for it to take anything between 6 and 18 months for us to start working together is a testament to how much shame there still is, how much guilt there still is, and how much procrastination and avoidance there is. But I say this from a place of acknowledgement, observation, and even love. I understand how that feels. It's incredibly uncomfortable and it's very new and it's very public. It's what Brené Brown calls that corporate discomfort. So if you are struggling with this, then you have corporate discomfort. There's an actual phrase for it. But for those people outside looking in, or even for your employees, it looks like your business reputation, branding, sense of self is more important than basic human dignities of your employees. And that can't sit well. To not want to have these conversations about your pay gaps is actually the definition of privilege. and very often comes from people who are not facing the pay gap, or that it's not impacting on them in any way, shape, or form, or they're denying how it impacts them. But if you're in a place where you can ignore it for a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year plus, then again, that's a definition of privilege, because you can remove yourself from the impact of it. But here's the thing. When you have that privilege, you have a responsibility. But alongside that responsibility comes vulnerability. And this is where the crux really comes in. Vulnerability in the corporate world is seen as a weakness, when in reality, it's a regular human emotion. And corporate organizations like yourselves are made up of humans. We all experience it, but yet we spend so much time trying to run away from it, trying to hide any of our vulnerabilities. Again, going back to the thing about, running away from discomfort, we spend so much time trying to, shift perceptions or make people look over there when, this is where your big ball of vulnerability is. But you can't resolve these difficult conversations if you don't embrace the vulnerability that they bring. The very reason they're difficult is because they are truthful, and sometimes the truth does hurt. There's no getting away from that. Now, Generation Z, that's anyone that's born between 97 and 2012. They are soon going to be the largest population on the planet. They're going to be working, hopefully working for you. But they are also the generation that's least likely to tolerate any kind of inequality at work. Now, when gender pay gap reporting came out, the Equality and Human Rights Commission decided to commission some research to find out what women's perception of having this data was and what it meant to them. Asked them lots of questions, but one of the key questions was this: how does having that data impact your career decisions? 6 in 10 said that they would now use gender pay gap data in the reports as one of the key factors in deciding whether they want to take a job or not. 6 in 10. That number is only going to get higher. And I know this because I have been a victim of the pay gap. And if I was looking for work today, it would be up there. I'd be looking at the makeup of your boards in terms of gender and ethnicity, and I would be looking at your gender pay gap report and your ethnicity pay gap report if you have one. And that will be going in the pot of things to think about alongside, career progression, salary benefits, etc. Something for you to think about. So, having said all this, you probably sat there in your seat thinking, oh, this is all really painful, but I still don't know how I'm going to have this conversation internally with senior influential people, let alone put it in a report and create an action plan and put it out there for everyone to see. I have a framework that helps you to do this, and there are 8 points in this framework, but today I'm going to concentrate on the 3 foundational things. And the first one is about curiosity, and it's about having curiosity for somebody else's point of view. And how do you do this? You practice listening. So you might think, yeah, easily done, I can do that. But listening is actually quite a skill which a lot of us don't have. How many times have we half listened to a sentence and we've thought we've understood what the person said and we've got it completely wrong? Now throw into the mix the sensitivities of these conversations that you're having around your pay gap, and it becomes even more imperative. So you have to practice hearing uncomfortable truths. You have to practice hearing different points of view. That could be new or could be uneasy for you to hear, but it is so important. I have an example of a financial services firm that had a gender pay gap meeting internally. They shuffled people into a room, told them that they weren't allowed to ask questions, and then shuffled them back out. That is not being curious about what people think about your pay gap report. That says, look, we've got to do this thing, we're going to do it, we don't want to hear what you have to say, but we want to tick a box. It goes back to the basic human dignity. It doesn't flow, it doesn't fit. The second aspect is around accepting responsibility in a calm way. Now, this is hard. I'm not going to lie to you. Something I struggle with in my own personal life. Probably something we all struggle with. But as an organisation, you have to accept that this is what you need to do. So, show maturity in your thoughts and your actions. So, thank people for being candid and honest about the problems, and accept, well, even if I haven't caused this, I have allowed it to happen on my watch. I have not stood up for other people. I have not noticed that this behaviour was wrong. I supported this practice. And it's not about you saying I'm personally responsible, but it's about acknowledging that collectively, if things are allowed to happen, then collectively responsible. And it's hard, I won't lie, but it is so important. And if you can do that, it will go such a long way to be able to find solutions. It's all about being fair, but also being vulnerable, because it is vulnerable to admit that you have got something wrong, or that you've allowed things to happen, or that you didn't have the courage back then to speak up, or that you didn't know that this was a problem. But people value the honesty and vulnerability. What they don't value is when you don't take responsibility and you cast blame and shame around. That is never helpful. So accept responsibility in a calm way. I can give you an example of an organisation that I was working with, and they wanted to do some work around the BME employees that they had working with them, but they didn't have very many, and they were essentially singling out one person to be their kind of poster girl. And so she called them out on it and said, look, I don't want to be singled out because I'm black. I have technical expertise, but you keep wheeling me out for all these kind of BME things, and it's making me really uncomfortable. And they responded in such a great way. They acknowledged that actually that's probably not the best way to go about it. And they were completely fine in accepting that, and there was no blame and shame attached. And that has helped to maintain a good working relationship with this person. She felt that she could say what she needed to say, and the organisation accepted responsibility for how it was perceived. Nobody was blamed, nobody was shamed, and the relationship is still going strong.